This Real Agriculture podcast is brought to you by Genesis Fertilizers. Nitrogen fertilizer is your farm's #1 expense. Farmers are working together through Genesis Fertilizers to solve the problem of high prices and security of supply by planning a state-of-the-art nitrogen plant. Security and earnings through ownership is the solution. Visit Genesis today at genesisfertilizers.com to learn more.
Good day and welcome to Wheat Pete's Word here on Real Agriculture for Wednesday, January the 10th. On this episode of The Word, incredible presentations, incredible knowledge. We are learning so much and it's new stuff. Keep me honest. Way to go, Nature Nut Nick. Soil health. Do we really care or do we just pay it lip service? Nitrogen, and talking about nitrogen use efficiency, how that comes together in the corn crop. And I doubt I get time at the end, but if I do, land values. Heard presentations on that just blow your brains out. Let's go. First off, oh my gosh, Tyler Smith, feature speaker, Friday, Ontario Agricultural Conference, Ridgetown, the SWAC portion. He is a Humboldt Bronco, and he's a survivor. He and his fiance now won the Amazing Race Canada. If you get a chance, that presentation alone is worth the price of admission to the virtual Ontario Ag Conference. You can still register for that. There is still the Midwest Ag Conference next Friday, the 19th of January. You can still register for that. Unfortunately, Kemptville is full, but regardless, that presentation just on the journey that young man has had in his short life is unbelievable, and how he learned that mental health really is something that you have to accept as one of the features of yourself and how you can deal with that. Incredibly powerful message. And Tech Talk Tuesdays, we had our first Tech Talk Tuesday last night. We talked a little bit about that and the number of people it affects at the conference. A grower came up to me and just talked about that and talked about how he had struggled for the last year, and that just coming to the ag conference itself, talking to other farmers, knowing that they also had issues and troubles and successes and wins, it just really helped him keep everything in perspective. So absolutely make sure you get out to some of these presentations. They're incredible, and make sure that you talk to people. Pick up the phone, do the Wheat Pete's 15. I'm not going to belabor that now, but what a powerful message. So if you can at all, spend the $180 and sign up virtually for the Ontario Ag Conference, even if you only watch just that one session of Tyler Smith. It is incredible. All right. Talking about incredible people, Ray Robertson at the Grey Bruce Farmers Week on Tuesday. He was inducted into the Grey County Ag Hall of Fame. He's an Ontario Ag Hall of Fame person. He's also a Canadian Agricultural Hall of Fame person. Such a deserving individual. Congratulations, Ray. That's absolutely incredible. So that was cool at that particular session. That's also, by the way, where I heard about the land values. So it's another great conference to attend if you can. I believe you can still get virtual registration there as well, but I shouldn't say for sure. On the downside, oh my gosh, Joe Lauer. Joe Lauer is just a force to be reckoned with in the corn industry. And Tony Vine, two behemoths in the corn industry, both retired as of December the 31st, 2023. We need these young agronomists, these young professionals to step up, because, man, we have a lot of holes starting to come up as old people like me retire and disappear out of the system. Two really great corn specialists there. And fortunately, we did have Dr. Tony Vine speak at the Ontario Ag Conference. He set tissues testing in corn totally on its ear. So in the post, we will link the interview that Bern Tobin did with Tony after his session. I probably will talk about it here on The Word in future episodes, but just we've been tissue sampling corn wrong. We haven't been actually taking the right leaf to get the right information. So it really turns things sideways. Watch that if you get a chance at all. Meanwhile, a while back on Real Ag Radio, Agronomy Monday, Wheat Pete said, yes, the days are getting longer, the sun's getting up earlier, and the morning life is good. And Nature Nut Nick reminded me that, hey Pete, guess what? The sun stays up later at night. It's like a young kid. It stays up later at night, but it actually does not get up earlier in the morning starting December the 21st. That doesn't happen till January the 8th. And so, Nick, you are right. I knew that. I was just flying along like I generally do. So yes, but now the sun is getting up earlier in the morning and staying up later at night. Life is going the right way in Wheat Pete's world from that perspective. Okay, I want to talk quickly about yields in the province of Ontario. So we have tied, I don't believe we've set a new soybean yield record, but we have at least tied it, 53.3 bushels per acre. I can't recall if the yield in 2018 was 53.4 or 53.3, but what an incredible job Horst Bonner, our soybean lead here with the Ministry of Agriculture and Food, has been doing, because we had record soybeans in 2018, 2021, and 2023. So in 3 out of the last 6 years, we have hit 53 point something bushel per acre provincial soybeans. That is incredible. By the way, 111% of the average farm yield. Right now, corn is standing at 197.8. So we all sort of thought that corn would break 200. Does not look like it's going to break 200. That might cost me. You just never know about that. But that might cost me regardless. 197.8. Not all the yields are in yet. Warren Schneckenberger, great friend out there in the Ottawa area, and just saying, I just finished, and my yields are going to help raise the bar on corn yields. He broke 200 as an average on his farm, and so there are those yields still coming in. It could move up a little, but it's not likely to break 200 at this point. Both corn and soybeans at 111% of average farm yields. So basically, we are 11% better this year in corn and soybeans, and wheat would also be in that same game. So an excellent year on average across Ontario. Okay, I want to move on, and Perry sending me a great text, and he was out soil sampling. So first off, good for you, Perry, because man, we gotta start with good base understanding, good knowledge of what we have. So soil sampling is awesome, but in his soil sample, there was still earthworms, and they were still active. And that isn't surprising at all. Believe it or not, earthworms will stay active at very low soil temperatures. Once the soil freezes, they go deep because they can't stand the frozen soil. They can't work through the frozen soil. So they aren't active then. They go deep. Or when it's super dry in the summer, they're probably the least active when it's super dry in the summer. And that's when they go to depths as well, because they need that moisture. So no, not surprised. The soil is still alive and going unless it is frozen solid. When I talk about earthworms, Paul and Larry both saying, man, do we care about soil health? Now, interestingly, Paul's in California, Larry's in Ontario, and you go like, wow, this is a North American issue. And I really do think we care about soil health, but I think that it's where we fit along that journey, and that everybody's impression of soil health is different. And there was a good Twitter discussion on this as well. Lots of excellent comments by Woody Van Arkel and Dr. Dave Hooker. And one of the comments that Dr. Dave made, and I do think that it really resonates, because when we look at the economics of cover crops in a field crop rotation, it is just about impossible to make cover crops pay. Even Shane and I did the roots not iron study. That was 8 years. 8 years where we looked at different management to try to increase soil health, to try to increase yields. And after 8 years, we did not find any economic benefit. But Dr. Dave saying, this concept of keeping cover crops in the rotation when it makes sense. I mean, you always have to manage, and we talked about this on Tech Talk Tuesdays last night as well. You have to manage those cover crops so that they fit in the rotation, so that they aren't a negative, because managed poorly or in the wrong place, the cover crop becomes a weed. So it is this balance. But Dr. Dave's saying that this concept of just having faith, that long term, those cover crops are going to have value. We just have to stay the course with cover crops and keep using them appropriately, because if we decide we're not going to and go back to scorched earth, as Larry would say, well, you know what? If in year 13 or year 15 we start to see those differences, now we are 13 or 15 years behind the 8 ball. And from Johnson's perspective, we talk lots about soil health, we talk lots about organic matter, but we do not talk enough about carbon cycling. And I just, in my career, I have come to the realization that the reason good crops beget good crops, high yield fields are always high yield fields, is because of carbon cycling, and cover crops can help with that carbon cycling. So I really do think that we just have to continue down that road. And so, Larry, I do think most people care. It's just where people are at on that journey. And by the way, there is so much that we don't know yet on soil health. Lindsay, if you're listening, I think we better do another agronomist on soil health. Or maybe, I guess I'm going to be part of a cover crop one here coming up. Maybe we can talk about it there. All right, I got to move on. And Josh asked just a great question. And his question was about nitrogen use efficiency. And he said, you know, Pete, like, we're in the Niagara Peninsula. We had a lot of water. We really expected we would lose nitrogen in the corn crop because we had so much water. And yet we have growers that applied 150 pounds of nitrogen and got 230 bushel per acre corn. That is awesome nitrogen use efficiency. We had other growers that just needed more nitrogen to get high yield corn. So they needed whatever, 180, 200, 220 to get that 230 bushel corn. And I have a grower who added 40 gallons of 28% over his normal 150 or 160 pound nitrogen application. So now we're at 270. We had tons of rain through late June, July, and we thought we'd get lost. We thought we would see response to that added 120 pounds of nitrogen. We got 1 bushel. Can you help me understand that? So the reality is that it's a simple answer, by the way. The grower that put 150 on, got 230 bushel corn, added another 120 and got 1 bushel. Nitrogen was not that grower's limiting factor. He already had enough, and I really do think it comes back to carbon cycling, and I want to go back to that field and say, you know, what are the organic amendments there? What were the yields of the previous crops? Is he just in a situation where he's cycling that carbon so fast that we're getting nitrogen out of the system so that we only need 150 pounds of nitrogen? But when it comes to the whole concept of too much water, that's, as John Hurd would say, that's back of the envelope math. But I'll put it a little bit in perspective in terms of it takes a lot of water in a short period of time to get the soil to a point where you lose nitrogen in late June or July on a corn crop. And here's why. First off, if you start dry, and certainly I think we did start dry, the soil holds about 2 inches of water in every foot, and we generally consider the top 3 feet. So we get 6 inches of water there. Now, if you're on a blow sand, it's only 1 inch of water. And if you're on the perfect soil, it's 2.5 inches perhaps of water per foot. But if there's 5 inches of water storage, the first 5 inches of rain that you get, if you've dried that out, and I think that was the situation, at least on my farm this year, we dried most of that out. So the first 4 or 5 inches we could store in the soil. And then the corn crop, once it's above your waist or by your shoulder, it's 1/4 of an inch of water per acre per day, up to 1/3 of an inch of water per acre per day. And we had corn this year that was 12 to 15 feet tall. Maybe that big a crop actually is even 0.4 inches of water per day. So when you look at that and you say, well, if I can store 4, 5, 6 inches in the soil, so I've got a pretty big buffer to start with, and then I get a 3-inch rain, well, 3 days later, 4 days later, 1 of those inches has been transpired by the corn crop. So now, again, I've made this storage volume. And so unless you get 9 inches of rain in a day, through that time period, it is just pretty tough to get that corn to go anaerobic and lose nitrogen. And so I think that's why you didn't see response to that added nitrogen as well. A little bit of a long discussion, but hopefully it makes a bit of sense. Okay, I want to move on. And a grower said, hey, Peter, so I think the weather in 2023, 2024, the winter, is exactly like it was in 1979, 1980. In the fall of 79, we got snow in November, mud at Christmas, frozen soil in January. What was the wheat crop and the crops like back in 1980? Because maybe that will predict what's going to happen this year. And, first off, I'd back up and say, well, gosh, I don't remember, because the grower asked, do you remember back that far? And yes, I was farming back then, but no, I don't remember back then because it's just too long ago. But I did look up the wheat yield for 1980, which was about 53 bushels per acre, and trend line would have been about 50 bushels of wheat per acre. So even with those weather conditions, the wheat crop was above average. And I'll stop there because that's all I know from that perspective. Another caller saying, hey, Peter, you talked about organic matter and the fact that Gabe Brown bale grazed. Well, if he moved a bunch of bales from field A to field B and bale grazed there, and then next year he moved a bunch of bales from field B to field A and bale grazed there, wouldn't you build organic matter? And the answer is for sure where you bale graze. But remember, when you bale graze, you do not get a nice uniform amount of organic matter all over, and typically you're bringing the bales from 100 acres and you're bale grazing 5 acres or whatever that ratio is. So once you get the organic matter built up where you bale graze, 100%, it's going to stay higher, it's going to cycle carbon better, it should be a better part of the field. But it still comes down to you're importing organic matter from somewhere to get that organic matter increase. Next, a caller saying, hey, Peter, buckwheat control. You always say, I hate buckwheat in a cover crop blend because it goes to seed too quickly and it's so hard to control. Why is that? And from an organic standpoint, I don't think we've had a problem with buckwheat. So the reason that buckwheat is an issue is that it tends to germinate over a long period of time the subsequent spring. You just get so many buckwheat seeds there, and you can take the first flush out in an organic system. You take that out with the first cultivation. You can take the second flush out, with your finger weeder, your hockey stick weeder. But in my experience, we took the first flush out with our burn down. We took the second flush out with marksman. We got a third flush, and there wasn't enough atrazine in the marksman or enough residual in the dicamba to take the third flush of buckwheat out. And we had to go through and clean the buckwheat up with a third application of glyphosate. And I think that is the challenge with any cover crop. I don't care if it's buckwheat or it's mustard. We had a discussion about mustard as well last night on Tech Talk Tuesdays. If you let cover crops go to seed, unless it's a big seed like pea or soybean that does not survive well in the soil, man, I think you just set yourself up for real challenges. So that's one of those balances of cover crops. Hey, I'm just going to bounce right here to what Ryan said about land prices and finish up quickly on that. Unbelievable. From 2020 to 2022, on average, in the 11 southwestern counties of Ontario, on average, land values went up 26% per year. From 2010 to 2013, they went up on average 30% per year. In 2023, they only went up 10.1%. If you look at the long term, land values, agricultural land values have gone up about 4.5% per year. On average, across all the years, 2010 to 2023, it was a 13% per year increase in land values. So if you think land values have just been going up way faster than they ever should have or that they historically would have, you are 100% right. And by the way, if they go up 10% in 2023, But now we're talking about $30,000 or $40,000 per acre land. That's $4,000. If you go back to 1980, it wasn't even worth $4,000. So those land prices, that was just a real eye-opener. By the way, the highest land value that he saw, the transaction, was $50,000 per workable acre. Oh my gosh. Good for the seller. I hope the buyer can make it work. It sure doesn't work on productive value of farmland. And with that, that's enough. That's it. That's all. On behalf of the team here at Real Agriculture, this is Wheat Pete with the word for Wednesday, the 10th of January. Hey, where's all the feedback? Tell me what you're learning at all these wonderful meetings, and that'll give me ideas for what to talk about next week. We'll see you then. Bye now.